version of that.
Trump confirming that the US is considering a limited strike on Iran. This comes after giving it an ultimatum to agree to a nuclear deal in less than 2 weeks from now, warning if it doesn't, then, quotes, really bad things will happen. Iran and the US have held 2 rounds of indirect talks now. They're due to hold a third. But Vice President J.D. Vance saying Iran has yet to even acknowledge President Trump's red lines. Gio?
So, Ian, what is this all about? What does the president want Iran to do? And are we talking about boots on the ground here?
Yeah.
Why would they call it a limited strike? Because no one cares, honestly. That's part of the reason. Like, it just doesn't matter. They're just making shit up.
All good questions. The US is pushing for 3 things. Stopping Iran's nuclear program, which Iran insists is purely for peaceful purposes. Secondly, a curb on its ballistic missiles. And lastly, an ending support for militant groups in the region, groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon. Despite the ongoing diplomacy, though, we're now seeing this kind of huge amassing of a military presence by the U.S. in the region. New satellite images show the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier sailing into the Mediterranean. We know that more than 100 cargo planes, refueling tankers, and fighter jets also heading here, and the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group is already here in the Middle East. All told, some 35,000 US troops across the region. But no, certainly for now, there is no suggestion of boots on the ground. I think if this happens, it's most likely to be an aerial campaign.
And I guess the next question is, what is Iran saying about this?
Yeah, I mean, fairly belligerent response from Iran. It's saying, look, we do want diplomacy, we do want peace.
Thanks,
but it's
Chatter.
also standing up and saying, look, if there is some kind of attack, it's ready to respond. It's saying that it'll respond decisively. Crucially, I think it's warning that all US bases, facilities and assets across this region would be, quote, legitimate targets. And also, I think, in a sign of the anxiety about the possibility of Iranian retaliation to any attack, US officials confirming overnight that a number of US troops may be
All right, let's get back to Iran.
moved out of their bases in the region. Janae?
All right, Ian, panel for us there in Tel Aviv. Our thanks to you.
And Trump warned Friday that limited strikes on Iran are possible. The president is pressuring Iran's government to dismantle its nuclear program. The warning comes as the United States ramps up its firepower in the Middle East. On Friday, the USS Gerald Ford aircraft carrier and 3 other warships entered the Mediterranean Sea. There are currently 13 U.S. Navy vessels in the Middle East, including another carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln. It is the largest military buildup in the region since the Iraq War in 2003. For more, we're joined from Washington by CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd. Sam, good morning.
Good morning.
So how close are we to military action against Iran?
Well, with the arrival of these additional military assets, Vlad, the president now has maximum optionality when it comes to deciding whether, when, and how he wants to conduct a strike against Iran. He now has the option to not just launch strikes into Iran, but also ostensibly to ensure that to the best extent possible, U.S. forces, U.S. personnel in the region are protected if Iran chooses to retaliate. So we are much closer to war than we were before, and the president is much better prepared to launch not just limited strikes, but a more extensive and prolonged military campaign that could have real repercussions for the American people.
So, Sam, you know, Iran is saying that they're working on finalizing a deal to propose to the U.S. Is there really a diplomatic off-ramp here?
Here's the real viewership.
There may be a diplomatic off-ramp, Adriana, but the timelines may just be off. I was involved in the early days of the Iran nuclear deal under President Obama. That deal took more than 20 months to negotiate, and President Trump has given a very short timeline for these negotiations. What it's really going to come back to is whether the president's team assesses that Iran is actually committed to these negotiations, whether Iran is committed to giving up its nuclear stockpile, which is something it hasn't been open to in the past. And that's normally an intelligence community assessment, something that President Trump has in the past personally tried to decipher.
Sam, we know that with all those military assets in the region, that a strike package would cripple Iran. But the question becomes, to me, what happens after you've struck Iran? If there is regime change in the cards, what does that look like?
Well, Vlad, Iran may feel very far away to the American people, but there's certainly repercussions for Americans themselves. On the one hand, Iran will retaliate. They have the largest and most diverse ballistic missile stockpile in the region. They will likely try to hit U.S. bases, U.S. personnel. They've demonstrated both the intent and capability to strike Americans abroad throughout their history. At the same time, they could try to close a waterway known as the Strait of Hormuz, which could send oil prices much higher. That could impact the price at the pump as we head into the spring and summer. And so that could have very real implications for the American people, even if there's not an effort at Iranian regime change.
Sam, as our viewers remember, when the U.S. struck Iran's nuclear facilities last summer, the president said they were completely obliterated. What is then the state of the threat from Iran?
Well, President Trump's own team does not agree that they were completely obliterated. His own national security strategy says they were significantly damaged. But here's what we do know. We do know that the American strikes did damage some of Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities and a research facility. But we also know that Iran still has a stockpile of what's known as highly enriched uranium. That's material, if enriched further, could be used to break out to a bomb. We also know that Israeli efforts did successfully eliminate some of Iran's top nuclear scientists, so their intellectual capital has suffered. So the question now is, where is their nuclear stockpile? Are they trying to get more of the equipment needed to enrich more uranium? And do they have the capability still to engage in what's called weaponization, actually making a weapon? And the million-dollar question, Adriana, is, do they want to break out to a bomb? And that is going to underline the conversation about whether Iran is committed to negotiations or not, or if they're just biding time.
All right, Samantha Vinograd, thank you so much.
Admiral, let me begin with you. Tell me about the firepower that we've assembled in the Middle East.
You started with a comparison to 2003. It's also like 1990, Persian Gulf War I. This is a huge amount of U.S. firepower. And let's kind of do it from the outside in, if you will, in concentric rings descending like Dante's Inferno. On the outer rings are big strategic bombers. They can come all the way from the United States. They can operate from other bases, but at distance. Inside are the two aircraft carriers. One you see there on the screen, it's in the northern part of the Indian Ocean. The other one is going to park right against Israel, where you see the word Syria on that chart. So now you've got two axes. These are 80 combat aircraft each, with F-35s, our most advanced jets, as well as plenty of F/A-18 Hornets. And then you go inside that, and you've got the capacity to launch Tomahawk missiles. You can send drones in. You can use cyber. And of course, there's land-based aircraft, Air Force aircraft at many of those bases you show there. So again, think of it like Dante's Inferno descending. Right in the center of it at the very bottom is Ayatollah Khamenei. I agree with President Trump. He would be wise to negotiate.
David Sanger, you know the president well. You've covered him extensively. You were part of that New York Times group that spent 3 hours with him in the Oval Office recently. So I put my unusual question to you. Should the Ayatollah be nervous that the administration just lost the tariff battle in the Supreme Court?
Well, you can certainly argue that the president is probably feeling right now the first pushback on his powers that he's felt really in the first year of his presidency. For the first time, the courts have sort of come in a big way and said, this is not within the powers of the presidency unless the tariffs that he had imposed were not legal. And he may well want to push back by showing that he can operate in an area where the Constitution gives him an enormous amount of leeway. But even here, the interesting question is, this would clearly be an act of war. I mean, the way you test it is if somebody massed this kind of force off the United States and threatened to conduct this, we would consider that a potential act of war. And yet Congress has not issued either an authorization to use military force, as they did in the case of Iraq, or passed a war resolution. And, you know, what did the president tell us in that interview? He asked whether there were any limits on his power. He said, really only my own morality. That's the only limit that I have.
Iran is preparing a new draft proposal after nuclear talks with the U.S. Iran's foreign minister is optimistic about a deal. He says the U.S. has not asked Iran to halt uranium enrichment, and Tehran has not offered to suspend it voluntarily. He told MS Now they're hoping to hand over the new proposal to Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, soon.
And I don't think it takes long. Perhaps in a matter of a week or so, we can start real serious negotiations on the text and come to a conclusion.
Meanwhile, the president warns that he's considering limited strikes on Iran to pressure the country into a deal. The USS Gerald Ford carrier strike group is already in the Mediterranean Sea, heading towards the Middle East to join other U.S. military assets in the region. But top Democrats are urging the Trump administration not to take military action without congressional approval. Benham Ben Taleblu, Senior Director of the Iran Program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, joins us now. Thanks for coming back. Let's take this in bites. First, the optimism you're hearing from Foreign Minister Araghchi, at least on the path to substantive negotiations.
Thank you, Open Press.
I read that you see Iran playing the game it has always played. What do you see here in this optimism?
Well, great to be back with you again. I think we have to pay attention to who the real decision makers are in the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that's not the foreign minister. It's actually the supreme leader. That's a title meant to be taken rather literally. And he hasn't been speaking that much since the end of the 12-day war with Israel and America, but he's spoken about maybe 14, 16 times since then, and his most recent speech struck a drastically, and I want to stress that for the audience, drastically different tone than what Araghchi has said, both in his Fox interview as well as in his MSNBC interview that you just alluded to. So while Araghchi is injecting a little bit of cautious optimism, I would say the chances of a deal are about 20% and dropping with the Islamic Republic at this rate. Even if, for example, enrichment was not discussed, there's a whole host of other issues that do divide and keep apart the U.S. and Iran, especially at this very tense moment.
And so you say there's a strong contrast between what we're hearing from the Ayatollah and what we're hearing from the foreign minister. What's the most relevant contrast that you hear from the supreme leader?
Well, I don't want to get too into the details. It might sound a bit too theological, but the supreme leader of Iran also is an Ayatollah, as you mentioned. And he does reference Islamic political history, and in particular Shiite political history, to justify political moves. For example, when he authorized nuclear negotiations with President Obama back in 2013, under the auspices of the P5+1, he talked about Imam Hasan, and he talked about heroic flexibility, needing to show flexibility with your opponents. And that paved the pathway for the 2015 JCPOA deal. But here he's been talking about Imam Hussein, whose epithet, the master of martyrs, kind of tells you all you need to know about the direction the Islamic Republic is headed in. And
it's literally, bro, it's all, it's much more simple than these guys. It's much more simple than these guys present it as, okay? They're like trying to do the reading the tea leaf shit. And it's like, America has placed like almost half of their fucking naval assets right around encircling the nation state of Iran. Okay. Of course, there's going to be retaliation. Like, what the fuck are we talking about? Like, yeah, America is like, why do we act like America moving naval assets and then consistently saying that they're going to bomb the fuck out of this country is not going to invoke any response from the country whatsoever? It doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah, dude, there are consequences to our actions. There are reactions that will take place to whatever violent militant action we take. It's understandable. It makes total sense. How would America respond? If we were encircled by every Chinese naval asset, how would the United States of America respond? We'd probably fucking nuke the Three Gorges Dam before that took place. It's so dumb to act like we're the main character and all these other countries around us are they should just shut the fuck up and eat it quietly. They should just get blown into oblivion. Only us in Israel have a right to defend themselves, obviously.
it's quite rare also internally to have military, political, and religious elites sing from the same sheet of music. And the same sheet of music is that if there's a strike, no matter how limited, Iran will respond in a massive way.
And so you mentioned the JCPOA that President Trump ended in his first term in 2018. And I just want to read a bit of what we learned from that interview from the foreign minister. We've not offered any suspension, and the U.S. side has not asked for zero enrichment. What we are now talking about is how to make sure that Iran's nuclear program, including enrichment, is peaceful and will remain peaceful forever, which would be too similar to the JCPOA. That it would be a complete contrast to what we're hearing from President Trump publicly. Is that credible at all, that continuing an enrichment program is part of the conversation?
Well, certainly the challenge for the Islamic Republic right now is how to transpose the reality that they're currently not enriching since the end of the 12-day war into something that looks like it's a concession for the United States of America. And that's precisely why America can ask for bigger things, more challenging things, because it's actually taken away enrichment from the Islamic Republic. It's taken away the capacity. It hasn't taken away the capability, aka the know-how, but nonetheless, Iran is not currently enriching today. So the Islamic Republic has decreasingly been able to actually threaten to restore enrichment or anything else like that. And therefore, it's trying to find a way to make Trump pay what he previously got for free. And that gets at the heart of the matter of enrichment in this agreement.
Yeah. The USS Gerald Ford, that carrier strike group, is in the Mediterranean. Of course, the Abraham Lincoln has been there for some time. You've said that the chance of a deal is 20% and dropping. So we know what you believe about the potential.
Isn't the FDD basically Israel? Yes. FDD is Benjamin Netanyahu's own cum sleeve, for the record. Foundation for Defending Democracy. My ass. It is one of the most pro-Israel, directly linked up with Israel, one of the most pro-Israel think tanks in the country. Yeah. The Trump administration is prepared to consider an Iranian proposal that allows Iran token nuclear enrichment if it leaves no possible path to nuclear weapon, a senior U.S. official told me. A source familiar with the talks told Axios that both Omani and Qatari mediators told Iran and the U.S. in recent days that any deal must enable both sides to claim victory and, if possible, also be something that Gulf countries and Israel can live with. The problem is Israel has a totally different approach to this. Okay? Israel's approach to the subject, Israel's approach to the situation is we want to destabilize Iran. We don't want them to have any ballistic missile production, or at the very least, we want to limit their ballistic missile launching capabilities to just their own backyard, I guess, and not Israel. Okay, that's it. That is Israel's approach. And unfortunately for us, we will do Israel's bidding. Okay, that's just the fucking reality. We are doing this for Israel. Make no mistake. There is no American design here. It's mostly just Israel running the show right now. American design happens to be aligned with Israel's interests or giving Israel whatever it wants. That's the reason why we are encircling Iran. That's the reason why we're talking about bombing Iran. That's the reason why we're having a conversation with Iran about limiting their striking capabilities. Because we care first and foremost about Israeli security. That's the reason why we're sending more surveillance assets to Iran this time around, a lot more than we did previously. Like all of those big fucking planes with the radars on top of them. The reason why we're sending those planes more than we did last time around is because in the 12-day war, Israel got fucking pummeled. Okay? In the 12-day war, when there was a tit-for-tat bombing campaign that took place, Israel got its shit pushed in. The AWACS planes. Yes. No matter how hard they postured after the 12-day war and talked about how fantastic of a success it was or whatever, how they destroyed Iran and destroyed the Iranian nuclear capabilities, all this stuff. The reason why America's bringing in even more assets than last time around is because they want to defend Israel, because Iran is going to strike back against Israel. Some of the American assets will be struck as well, but first and foremost, our attention and our interest is defending Israel. Okay? The THAAD missile systems that we sent to Israel, that we drop shipped into Israel in a hurry, did not do dick. All of the Tamir interceptors, the Arrow systems, they all could not stop Iranian missiles from striking Tel Aviv. So now, we just have to strike Iran again, I guess. Go to war with Iran. Now, the type of assets that we've sent into the region implies that we think we can get away with a limited strike and hope for a tit for tat that won't be super consequential to Israel, and it won't be super costly in terms of lives lost for American personnel. If we were led by normal human beings and not monsters that are working at the behest of an international pedophilic cabal of capitalists who really care about Israel for some fucking reason, and the Greater Israeli Project as a Greater Israeli Project as a stabilization mechanism in this resource-rich region, okay, then most likely we would not have done away with the JCPOA under the Barack Obama administration, under the Trump administration immediately after Trump won, post-Barack Obama, and we would have continued normalizing relations with Iran instead of fucking starving the Iranian population until they got so mad that they tried to, overthrow their government. But that's not the world we live in. And now some American military members are probably going to die if we go and directly strike Iran. The I'm not going to die for Israel crowd that voted for Donald Trump is going to find out very quickly that they might actually die for Israel.
For a military strike, what are the indicators from Iran that they believe that a military strike is coming?
Well, it's actually very interesting that both America and Iran continue to talk about being interested in negotiations, but also continue to do things physically that tell you that they're getting ready for a strike. The Islamic Republic, for example, continues to build back better when it comes to its ballistic missile program. We know that that's really the spinal cord of its deterrence at this point in time. It's the long pole of the regime's security strategy. And then most importantly, it seems to be hardening some nuclear sites. So in the case that there's a strike that is not just against missile facilities, but actually against what's left of the nuclear program, particularly,
I wonder why Persian John Favreau, that a sovereign country that has been declared a foreign adversary in perpetuity, would want to have fucking missile systems as a deterrence. I wonder. It's so shocking to me that a foreign adversary that we have been starving for fucking decades with sanctions and consistently and actively trying to destabilize would build a deterrence system.
Future, a plant that is believed to be a future enrichment facility or previous research and development labs, those things per commercial satellite imagery are being hardened. So when you take its tough rhetoric on missiles and then you look at this kind of hardening and dispersal, it looks like both sides are getting ready for exit options from negotiations.
Ahmed Talablu, thank you so much for being with us.
For well over 2 years now, Israel has refused to allow outside journalists into Gaza and has killed more than 270 Palestinian journalists working there. It has been by far the greatest assault on the free press in many decades. It is also an issue that gets very little attention here in the United States. We wanted to find out what, if anything, senators and members of Congress even know about this and what they think about it. Sent our Capitol Hill correspondent, Julian Andreoni, to probe. Here's what they had to say.
If Israel should let more foreign journalists in?
Yeah, like American journalists, British journalists into Gaza to cover the carnage.
Well, I don't know how dangerous it is over there. I should be the one making that decision. That should be left up.
Yeah, that should be left up to the fucking journalists, but Tommy Tuberville's a dumbass. Yeah. Going to conflict zones is always going to yield danger. It's one that, journalists, it's a calculation that journalists make all the time. Israel's just not letting them make that calculation at all.
So obviously, Israel and the people that want to go in there, it's got to still be dangerous.
There are no journalists in Gaza?
No, they haven't let any in.
Yeah, I obviously not aware of that. I mean, I think transparency is the best, so I'll leave it at that.
I'd leave that up to Israel determining what can safely, whether the journalists could safely be there.
My expectation is that those borders will become more porous. They'll have more journalists, more all kinds of people going back and forth.
Oh, but they haven't let anybody in so far.
I know. I'm just saying that there's a process that will lead to people going in and out.
I strongly believe journalists should have access to Gaza.
We should have the free press access as many places as we can. Yes.
I think the whole situation, what's going on in Gaza and the existence of Hamas is very troubling, and it's still there. So I'm going to let them handle that situation.
Is there some sort of action that Congress can take, though?
No.
Because it's one thing to say it's troubling, but it's another to
I don't
try
think
and
it's
stop it.
congressional action, no.
I don't have anything for you on that.
Nothing? What about...
We're good. We're on the way to vote. Thank you.
I defer to Israel on that.
I'm not prepared to respond to that at the moment.
There's got to be some kind of significance to that. And I don't want to point a finger at anybody. There's got to be some good reason. But
you think it's because the Israeli government doesn't want people to see what's going on in there?
Well, it's pretty much over with, though. I mean,
No, there's still people being killed every day. We just saw it. Yeah, mass carnage over the weekend.
Yeah, we haven't seen any of that. So, I mean, I haven't seen any of it.
Okay.
You know, I haven't seen any reports on it.
Perhaps you would see reports on it if they let journalists in. Don't you think that could be one of the ways where you could find out more about what's going on?
So
Israel's our friend. Oh yeah, that's not talking about digital assets today, and my mind's not on Israel right now.
But just as a general principle of constitutional ideal of freedom of the press.
I don't want to talk about Israel right now.
So as you heard there, when I asked representatives and senators about Israel's continued reluctance to allow outside journalists into Gaza, they told me they haven't heard about that, or they haven't seen it. Or maybe there is some good reason why Israel isn't allowing journalists into Gaza. Maybe it's just not safe enough yet. Let's hear if they had anything more forceful to say about the continued indiscriminate killing of civilians, most of them women and children in Gaza, since the ceasefire was signed in October of 2025. A couple weekends ago, there was a lot of carnage, and the Board of Peace released a statement that equated the Israeli carpet bombing of civilians to Hamas coming out of tunnels. And I'm sort of just curious about, like, what is causing the most of the death in Gaza right now? Is it Hamas coming out of tunnels, or is it bombing?
Look, what we've seen is, I think it's well over 500 people who have been killed. Yeah. Lots of them civilians. Lots of kids, and what you see is a continuing, pattern of the indiscriminate killing of Palestinian civilians.
Yeah. I think we need to support Israel,
even if they're breaking all.
Chris Van Hollen, my goat, one of the best in Congress. No, don't say just 500. It's more than 1,000. But like, dude, look at how he's a fucking cut above. No, he's saying since the ceasefire, chat, the number is actually more than 1,000. You have to calm down. He's not. You have to calm down and stop being antagonistic to every single person. Like he probably doesn't know what the actual number is, but it's not like he's directionally right. He still recognizes what's going on as cruel and unusual. Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Some of you have issues with like hearing, I feel like. While the bar is low, he's acknowledging the fucking carnage. You need to stop being antagonistic for the sake of being antagonistic, please. Okay? Please. Yes, the bar is low, but Chris Van Hollen has been clearing that bar regardless. He's not like the other ghouls in Congress.
All of the ceasefire agreements that are
Israel because,
just for what reason?
Hamas are a bunch of terrorists.
I think we need to exercise oversight in the military spending that is provided to all of our allies, whether Saudi Arabia or Israel, all countries around the world.
It takes both parties, the Israelis and the Hamas, to effect a ceasefire. And so, I tell you, the fact that it hasn't taken hold in the way it should says that that's another thing you should be paying attention to.
He has a very short attention span, I would say. But the main thing is, people in this country are trying to afford all of the things that they have to pay for, food, housing, and all that. And it's
So you think they don't want their money going to Israel?
No, I don't think so. Although, I support Israel's right to self-defense, all of that.
Is that what they're doing right now, self-defense?
Oh, now you're trying to... not going there. So...
Why not?
Anyhow, let's all of us pay attention to the stuff that people care about.
I've called for a ceasefire.
Oh, there's a ceasefire that was signed in October, but they continue.
Do you understand the difference when someone is like very clearly not trying to say anything versus what Chris Van Hollen was saying earlier? And no, to say that she has that take because she's old is to actually take away the responsibility. It's far worse than that. They are soulless demons, okay? They all know what the fuck is going on. They all know what's going on. They're just terrified of speaking out against it. Even though they should, at least by now, know that they have the public's backing if they do speak out against it. Which leads me to believe that they don't want to speak out against it because they don't want to fucking shut off the lobbying money. Or rather, they don't want to have lobbying expenditures against them going to their opponents. It's not just cowardice, it's complicity.
To violate it every day.
Have you talked to the Republicans? They're the ones in charge.
You're offering too much charitability by implying that they care about what's happening in Palestinians? No, I said Chris Van Hollen is one of the only ones that actually does. How do you know that they know? Wild assumptions? You're right. I'm making a wild assumption that American congresspersons don't know what's going on in fucking Gaza. Okay, then that's an abdication of responsibility. Then they shouldn't be in fucking Congress, dumbass.
I have, but is there any way to enforce the terms of the ceasefire with your position of power?
You probably should contact the Republicans because they're the ones in charge, as well as the president who said he was going to build beachfront property.
Well, the primary responsibility is with the administration, since it's a foreign operations relationship with countries. We continually try to monitor the behavior there and are critical when necessary. And
what have you found monitoring that?
That the ability to provide humanitarian assistance is something that has to be enhanced, and then the level of violence should come down.
The plan moving forward is to try to bring, additional pressure. This is an area where, obviously I have lots of areas I totally disagree with the president on, but if his plan for reconstruction can work, but we can't.
Oh, lots of areas of disagreement with the president. This one, not so much. Thanks, man. Thanks, man. Fantastic.
Keep giving, unlimited time when it doesn't seem like lots of the other nation states are.
You're open to his plan for reconstruction?
Listen, I'm open to anything that's going to bring peace to Gaza that actually recognizes the legitimate rights of the Palestinians. To my mind, I'm not sure.
The beachfront property.
Yeah, I'm not saying. Listen, I think that was again that video, whether it was fake or not, or was sanctioned by the president, was outrageous. It was insulting. It was disrespectful, for folks of the Muslim faith, and But the notional idea that other nations would join, that's a good idea. But I've not. Where's the beef?
Sorry, no comment. Nothing.
Well, I have no power to enforce anything. Obviously, people are dying. Somebody's breaking the ceasefire.
Yeah, I right now it's kind of hard for me. I don't think we're at a posture where it's a true ceasefire. It's a de-escalation. But I mean, if you just look at it objectively, you can't count that number of casualties and assume that there has been a cessation of hostility. So we've got a lot more work to do.
But I mean, you guys are working with the Israeli government,
Yeah.
and so what can you do in negotiation with them and saying, hey, you guys got to uphold your end of the deal? You can't just keep bombing these civilians.
At this point, the Congress is not a party to those negotiations. That's happening between the administration and trying to keep the story.
Right, but you guys are a part of
At the end of the day, if you know math around here, a congressional act is not possible.
I'm sure you're aware that I'm very full full backing Israel. So that's the only thing else I have to say.
So are you not worried about ceasefire violations?
Hold the line, Senator. Hold the line. Hold the line.
Oh my God. Bro, is that a handler? Is that one of the ogre handlers that came in and was like, hold the line, bitch? He got the AIPAC handler speaking on the side. I love Israel. I'm Israel high.
Are you not worried about ceasefire violations, Senator?
I keep killing Hamas, Hezbollah, all of them. I fully support it. I get it out of my face.
Well, they should begin to enforce the ceasefire. We have a continuing.
You say keep killing Hamas, Hezbollah, all of them? Get this out of my face. The Committee to Protect Journalists, or whatever the fuck it's called, killed this annual report on impunity because Israel is the most bloodthirsty journalist killer. I know. That's why it's like Center for Responsible Journalism and all those like Journalists Without Borders, all those other fucking dumbass groups that people point to whenever they're like, Cuba is actually the worst country for press freedom. Brother, you already dropped all notion of infallibility and objectivity when you chose to not cover Israel's carnage on journalism.
Humanitarian disaster in Gaza. But if you look at Trump's own 20-point plan, and there are lots of issues with that plan, but it does envision Palestinian self-determination, and it envisions a two-state solution, which we all know is already very difficult to achieve. But what the Netanyahu government has been doing has been making it literally impossible. In fact, Smotrich and others who are part of the Netanyahu government have been quite open,
saying it out loud,
about their goal is to make sure there's no Palestinian state. So you would think that the president, would work with the other signatories to the 20-point plan to actually enforce that provision and certainly not allow the Netanyahu government to close the door on it. What we've seen is a pattern of this administration providing the Netanyahu government with a blank check.
Yep.
And if they're not going to be serious about exercising leverage, they will never be successful.
I'm Ryan Grimm, a reporter for DropSite News, an independent nonprofit news outlet. If you're not signed up to get our free newsletter, you can find.
And this is something.
Where do you draw the line, Daniel? Cat, I was like for Illinois.
That I've said at multiple forums, but I think we need to ask it directly. I think I know Laura's answer, but Daniel, I also want to know, do you consider what is happening in Gaza a genocide?
Not allowed to answer.
Yes, I think we all want to know.
I don't use the word genocide to describe what's been done in Gaza. I don't criticize those who do. And let me explain my position, because this is something that I've thought deeply about.
Hold on 1 second. Kat, are you okay with this? Yeah, I think that's it. We just wanted a yes or no. I respect that, and I think that you're a nice man. I also think this is a technical definition that almost every human rights organization in the world has recognized, including B'Tselem. And we have to draw the line somewhere. And I'm not meeting with AIPAC. I've been approached by groups that hold values like theirs, that support Trump like them, and I don't even take the meeting.
Public anger about the fate of the...
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You are fucking delusional. You are a delusional monster.
National law, like pension funds linked to arms companies.
This is really important to uphold the rights of the Palestinian people and to make sure that we can make ethical investments.
What's your response to local residents who might say, I want my local councillor to focus on local issues?
I talk to residents every day on the doorstep. They want to see their council representing them on a national level. We know that most people really want to see an end to the genocide in Gaza.
Israel denies accusations of genocide in Gaza. So far, 345 of the councillors who've signed the pledge are from the Green Party, followed by 338 from Labour, as well as 104 Lib Dems. In Islington, 59% of councillors have signed, with 29% in Bradford, for example. Here in Hackney, where there have been years of debate and protest on the issue of divestment, it's 16%. And local voters have strong views.
I'm 1,000% behind it. I think this is a sign of being a mature, civilised country.
Instead of them running other people's business, run Hackney Council business first.
It's a global issue that we care about tremendously. So, yeah, I think it's not just, it's a necessity that they talk about it.
Sir Keir Starmer's initial reluctance to support a full ceasefire in Gaza cost Labour a great deal of support among many Muslim communities and pro-Palestinian voters ahead of the last general election. Now Labour's control of many councils up and down the country is in jeopardy as a result of their dire poll ratings. The Prime Minister did recognise Palestinian statehood in September, but many on the left of his party would like him to go further.
So many Labour councillors have been so keen to sign the Palestine pledge as councillors because it puts on record their support for Palestine and distinguishes them from the position taken by the leader of the Labour Party.
The Israeli embassy told us the campaign is a disgraceful effort at intimidation and calls for a boycott should be rejected. And some in Labour are concerned about these kinds of tactics.
I see Palestinian Solidarity Committee trying to interfere in local elections in the UK and encourage councils to develop their own foreign policies. I think it's a dangerous road to go down. I think undoubtedly it could create tensions in some communities.
This is your highest viewership ever. Congratulations. That's not true. No. I'm being botted, but hopefully they can't take that away from me. My highest viewership ever is 314,000 on the last election night.
The UK government say they formally recognise Palestine to protect the viability of a two-state solution and create a path towards lasting peace. Hackney Council, meanwhile, told us they're committed to taking further steps towards divesting their pension fund investments. But with Labour's control of councils across the country at risk, every new Palestine pledge adds to the pressure. Amanda Akas, Sky News, Hackney.